Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Global Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kyle Quinn. And joining me today is Jay Motty from Stretford Paddock. Great to have you back on the show, then, Jay.
Good to be back, man. Thanks for having me on. It's always good to chat. It's been a little while, so yeah, good to catch up.
The last time you were on, I think, was March the 30th. I see, and you probably thought the next time you're on, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about the Glazers putting the club up for sale, but that's where we are here in November. So just want to get your thoughts on that first of all.
Yeah, you're right. I certainly didn't expect that. It's been a pretty mad sort of what has it been? 24 hours now since that announcement, was it about that?
Yeah.
I didn't see it coming. I thought that I was always had the suspicion that sooner or later the Glazers will sell when it becomes sort of more profitable for them to sell. But I didn't expect it to be this month or this week or even this season. To be honest with you, I thought it might drag on for a couple more years. I think there's a whole host of reasons it's happened though. When you look at stuff like the Super League not happening, which would have brought in a lot of money. The door's been closed on that. You look at the protests as well. You look at the fact that like Liverpool are up for sale and Chelsea just had a sale. They're probably looking at it and going, now's the time for us to get, to cash in basically because of all these reasons. So yeah, it's not like a complete shock, but it is a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, it sounds too good to be true, almost, doesn't it? In a way. There's been lots of speculation about who's going to take over from them. Lots of names been. I don't know why it's the media kind of, putting names in there just for more clicks, or these people are generally interested. I even seen just earlier on Twitter, Mark Zuckerberg being linked to Jeff Bezos, and it seems a bit wild that. And then Dubai, which is would be controversial, of course. And of course, just in the last hour, it's been confirmed that Jim Radcliffe is going to bid, which we expected. So who would be your preferred consortium to take over?
I think the ones you mentioned and the ones that I've seen, Jim Ratcliffe kind of makes the most sense. He's a boyhood United fan. When he was in for Chelsea, you saw that. I don't know if you saw the interview he gave where he spoke about Chelsea, the club, about not wanting to just make money out of them, wanting to get them to the top of back to the top of European football. He seems to understand how football works and how football fans think. Now, I'm not saying he'd be perfect. I don't think there is a perfect owner out there, but I think he'd be certainly more in tune with what it takes to run a football club. And I don't think he would necessarily be doing this to make money, to make a profit. I think there is an element of. I spoke to Kieran Maguire from the Price of Football, and I'll just mention this because this will explain what I'm on about. And he said he knows a lot more about this sort of thing. And he's saying, like, with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he can see a scenario where Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I think, turns 70 this year. He's sort of thinking about his legacy. What's he going to leave behind? This is a man who's just, he's Britain's richest man. He's not, doesn't need to necessarily make money out of this. It's a case of what can I do? What can be my sort of, footprint on history. Now, he's already, done something for British cycling. I'm not too sure how, the ins and outs of it all, but I know he's been big in British cycling. Very successful businessman. If he can be the man that sort of turns Manchester United's fortunes around and saves Manchester United for the Glazers, then there's probably no bigger legacy in sport that you can leave if you do that. So maybe there's a chance that that's his intention. Again, it is a maybe. If it is, that would be great. That'd be great if he's coming into it just to make, United challenge and get back to the top. But we'll have to wait and see because, the Glazers, they only care about money. And if there is a sovereign state or, a consortium who don't really care about the fans or whatever, but offer the Glazers more money than Sir Jim Ratcliffe, then the Glazers are going to sell to them. They're not going to be bothered about who takes over Manchester United from them. They just want to get the most amount of money they can.
Yeah, Radcliffe definitely has a massive amount of money, but whether he has the money to buy United when he's going to be huge competition, to buy United probably by the sounds of things, and like you say, there'll be people who are much wealthier than him that he could be competing against. It has been questioned by journalists as to whether Jim Radcliffe does he have he's a billionaire, of course, but does he have enough money to buy United and invest in the stadium and the training ground and the infrastructure? Does he have that kind of money? No, we don't really know, but hopefully he does. because he would probably be the best option out of all of them. What has confused me is the links to Dubai, and apparently it's the government in Dubai who want Dubai United. Is that not? I thought like Abu Dhabi and Dubai are part of the same country. Can you have one of them own City and one of them own United? Would there not be a conflict of interest? Or could you explain that to me? Because I don't get it.
I wish I could. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. You'd have thought there'd be a conflict of interest there. I've also heard that I was chatting to someone today and they were saying, oh, maybe the Qataris would be interested in Manchester United, but don't they own Paris Saint-Germain? So I don't know whether, if you're talking about an actual state, then you would think that would be a conflict. But if you're talking about companies or whatever within a state, then obviously they can have as many clubs as they want. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the actual rules are there and who exactly we're talking about. I know you are going to get sovereign states interested. You're going to get these links. There was talk of the Saudis being in for us a few years ago. Obviously now they've taken over at Newcastle. So I'm not quite sure on what the rules and regulations are, and I don't know if there's ways around them, because we've seen owners in the past getting around certain, rules they don't like. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I mean, personally, I'd rather we didn't become part of the sort of sports washing enterprises that we've seen at a few clubs recently. I've been quite critical of clubs who've gone down that route. I'd hate to see Manchester United go down that route. I really would.
Yeah, so would I. With regards to Qatar, I think they would be allowed to own PSG and United because they're in two different countries. The same way like Red Bull, for example, own a team in Austria and Germany. Yeah, and City obviously own the Abu Dhabi
It'd be
group.
quite interesting though, wouldn't it? If you meet in the Champions League.
Yeah,
what goes on? Is there any sort of like? I don't know. It'd just be weird, wouldn't it? Like you've got two teams that are owned by the same person or same company or same country, whatever, competing in the same competition. I don't know, but yeah, like you obviously you've done your own work, so you know what's going on there. But I just hope we avoid all that situation and we don't go down that route. I really do.
Yeah, you want our owner to be as squeaky clean as possible, really, don't you? And you don't want United to be used for sports washing like other clubs have been. I seen a poll earlier on Twitter that a fan took as to whether they would be okay with like a nation state owning United or not, and most people didn't want that. I think 62% or something. So I was happy to see that.
That's quite telling that when it 38%, we're all right with it.
Yeah, it's quite high, isn't it?
It is, you know what I mean? Like, you'd have thought there'd be a bit more than that were against it. So, yeah, when you look at numbers like that, it shows that it could probably happen. I think you've only, just over a third of United fans were against it. I know this isn't obviously a very scientific poll. It's just a Twitter poll. But, it's a good indication of the sentiment out there.
Yeah, the opinions are very divided in that one. But it seems like most people, want to have the owner to have moral standards. Just on the Udinese and Watford are owned by the same people, aren't they? I know there's probably little chance of them meeting in Europe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The two Red Bull teams, I think a couple of years ago they were in the same group. So it must have been a bit weird.
Yeah, I think City own several clubs, don't they?
But they're all on different continents, aren't they?
Yeah, there's like New York and Melbourne, but they did own one in Spain, didn't they?
Did they?
Yeah, there was. I can't remember. There was one. I think Pep's brother was running it, not as a manager, like as a chairman or whatever. But I think they were like in the Spanish second division or whatever. I think they got promoted to La Liga, and then sort of dropped down or whatever. But yeah, I mean, listen, there's always ways around it when that sort of money's involved.
And I think Jim Radcliffe, not only does he own Nice, but he owns a team in Switzerland as well. But again, the team in Switzerland, they're so low down, I don't think there'd be any chance of him ever meeting Nice in European competition. But yeah, hopefully we're not bought over by Qatar and there isn't that conflict of interest and so on. But okay, hopefully we do change ownership in the next couple of months. The only thing that I'm worried about is that these new billionaires who take over clubs, they tend to want to appoint their own man in the dugout. And after a couple of defeats, they get rid of the old guy and bring in the new guy. We've seen it happen to Thomas Tuchel quite recently. For me, I'd hate that to happen because I've been really impressed with Ten Hag so far, and I hope if a new owner comes in that he sticks with Ten Hag. Is that the way you would see it too?
100%. I think Ten Hag's doing a fantastic job, and I think it'd be a massive error for someone to come in and get rid of him, because I think you look at the signings he's made, the way he's getting a tune out of certain players like Rashford and McTominay and Luke Shaw, and bringing through youngsters like Alejandro Garnacho. I think if you just to bring in another manager, I'd be disappointed. I don't think there's a manager we could get that would do a better job than Erik ten Hag. I really don't. I know you might argue there's better managers out there, but would they come to United? No. If you're talking about maybe Pep Guardiola or Carlo Ancelotti or whatever, but I'd rather have Ten Hag out the managers you can get, because I think he's doing a good job, and I think you nailed it. And it's like a new owner comes in and wants to show everyone, stamp his authority or whatever, or bring his own guy in. But we don't need that. We just need someone who's going to come in and back this manager. That's what's needed.
Yeah, 100%. And there might be better managers out there, but they're currently employed. So on some of them are employed by our biggest rivals. So that ain't going to happen. So we should just stick with Ten Hag, because I can't think of anyone who's unemployed or else who isn't at City or Liverpool who'd be good enough to come to United and do better than Ten Hag. I can't think of anyone. So yeah, I would 100% like to see him get a couple of years to see what he can do. And one of the most amazing things so far is that every single signing he's made has hit the ground running. It's worked out. I can't remember the last time that happened. Usually, half of them do well and half of them flop, and usually there's signs early on and it's not going to work out for them. But they've all done really well, haven't they? And then he's brought Garnacho into the team, like you mentioned. How excited are you about Alejandro Garnacho? He looks like he could be an absolute superstar as long as he keeps his feet on the ground.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I saw him last season in the FA Youth Cup, and he was amazing in not just the final, but in a few games as well in the run-up, especially at Old Trafford, scoring loads of goals on the way. So yeah, we know what he can do at a younger level. It's just a question of maybe there's a couple of questions around his attitude and being late for training or late for a team meeting. I think on pre-season had a few people concerned, but he's got his head down. Obviously, a fantastic player, full of tricks and confidence, and can score a goal as well. I was at the I can't remember the Villa game in the Carabao Cup, Old Trafford, where he set that goal from McTominay, and he was just running the show when he came on. He was only on for half an hour, but he was just got the crowd off the seat. It's just a fantastic player, and yeah, if we can look after him in the right way, I'm looking forward to see just the sort of levels he can reach, because his ceiling is very, very high.
It is, yeah. We've had a few false dawns with the likes of Adnan Januzaj and Makeda and players like that, and then obviously there's another player who's seemingly ruined his career by something he's done off the pitch. So it was another false start. But this guy, I would say, is more talented than all those. His ceiling is much higher, and he does have that wee bit of arrogance about him. But hopefully he can channel that in the right way, and Ten Hag can look after him and develop him and keep his feet on the ground. And because quite often happens these young players, some like Memphis Depay would be an example of this too, where just by getting into the United first team, he thinks that he's made it, but you haven't made it until you've won something. So yeah, as long as he keeps his feet on the ground, he keeps working hard and doesn't get ahead of himself, then sky's the limit for him. He could really be. I know people are going to laugh at me here, but he could really be a Ballon d'Or winner.
No, you know what? Like you say, the sky is the limit, and there's nothing wrong with saying that, because you can see the talent he's got, the confidence he's got, the ability he's got, and he's just got to be handling the right way. And I understand why you're saying those things, because when you see a player like that, it's not easy to not get carried away. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like you look at it and it makes you feel so excited watching him, and you think, you know what? Look at how young he is. Look at how well he's playing now. If he goes on that trajectory, who knows? Just like you said earlier, you have to be a little bit cautious, because I've been there myself a few times and I've been caught on camera saying things that have come back to haunt me a few years later. Do you know what I mean?
It happens to the best of us. Okay, moving on now to a former teammate of Alejandro Garnacho as of yesterday. Ronaldo has now left the club.
Nice segue there. Nicely done.
Absolute legend in his first spell at the club, won absolutely everything. Unbelievable player, then left to go to Real Madrid, which broke our hearts. But then sensationally came back in 2021. But after a year and a half, it's all ended in tears after doing that interview with Piers Morgan, which was clearly designed to get him out of the club, because he wasn't happy with the fact that he's not starting enough games under Ten Hag. But rightly so. Whenever he has played, he's not been good enough. He looks every bit of his age, and he doesn't fit into what Ten Hag wants from a front player. He can't press. He's just more of a statue up there these days. And even the one thing that he did do last season, which is score goals, he's not even doing that anymore. So he can't hit. I'll come back to my quote from a previous show where I said his ego is writing checks that his body can't cash, I'm afraid. He thinks he's still the best player in the world. Piers Morgan still thinks he's the best player in the world. All his fans do, but he's not. That's not what he's been producing this season. And I can't possibly see him going to a better team than United. He probably thinks he can find a club like that, but I can't see it. I think he's going to have to drop down in level now if he's going to play regularly. So, what's your thoughts on Ronaldo leaving the club then?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. You mentioned it there. It doesn't matter whether he thinks he's the best player in the world, or Piers Morgan thinks he's the best player in the world, or all his fans think he's the best player in the world. What matters is, does Erik Ten Hag think he's the best player for Manchester United? And he obviously doesn't, because he doesn't pick him when everyone's fit. He doesn't even pick him half the time when Anthony Martial's out. And Anthony Martial's the one who leads the line when he's fit as well. So that just shows you how far Ronaldo has fallen. And I agree with what Erik Ten Hag, his way of thinking. I don't think United are a better team with Ronaldo in it this season. And I think if you look at his performances, I think just before he left this season, it was like 15 games, was it? 3 goals, 2 of which came against Sheriff. I mean, that's not a sort of return you expect from a player like Cristiano Ronaldo. And it is sad to see, because I think we're witnessing the decline of one of the greatest players ever. But that's what we're seeing. I'd be very surprised if he turns this around and goes to a top club and bangs in 30 goals this season. You look at Ronaldo's record over the last, whatever it is, 13 seasons, 14 seasons, whatever, 30 goals, 40 goals, 40 goals, 40 goals, 50 goals, whatever. Season, just ridiculous numbers. And then this season, missing chance after chance after chance against dross like ammonia. I mean, that's not Cristiano Ronaldo that we know. And I think he's struggled to cope with it, and he's lashed out. Obviously wants to leave, like you said. Added to get the manager. Can't do that. You can't say that about the manager and keep your job. I don't care about his comments on the Glazers. I think that, you welcome them. We all hate the Glazers. But when you start saying that Erik Ten Hag disrespected you and you've got no respect for him, then your position becomes untenable.
Yeah, and I believe that he hasn't taken a payoff. He's left without taking the wages that he would have been entitled to. So that's good. He must have been desperate to leave if he's willing to go without taking a payoff.
I mean, there is that. I think he can afford to not take the 70 million. I think United can sort of the lawyers as well. He might have been in breach of his contract. You can imagine in his contract there's something about what you say publicly, what interviews you agree to, and stuff like that. So maybe there is a bit more in it than just, he's agreed to it. Maybe he didn't have much of a choice, but it was obvious he wanted to go. And listen, Ronaldo might be a lot of things, but he's not stupid. He understands the media as well. He's media savvy. And he would have known as soon as he gave that interview and what he said in that interview, his time at Manchester United was doomed.
Yeah, and it was the best possible way. They settled it out of court basically and got it done within a few days. So it's not going to be the long legal process that we all feared. So it was done nice and smoothly, and we can move on now. What we will see now is anytime we lose a game, Piers Morgan's going to be straight on slagging off Ten Hag. We're going to, but we're not really bothered about that. But what I would love to see. Yeah, exactly. What I would love to see is Ronaldo go to Arsenal, because Piers Morgan thinks he would enhance Arsenal and bring them the title home. If he went into that side and replaced Gabriel Jesus, they would get worse. They would go from 1st to 6th, in my opinion.
Yeah, because he doesn't. I don't think he helps that team. I don't think he's going to play in the Premier League. I think he's going to go elsewhere. And at the moment, I think there's a lot of anger towards Cristiano Ronaldo. There's just a lot of disappointment. I think in a few years' time, most United fans will probably look back and go, Cristiano Ronaldo was one of the best players we've ever had, and he'll still be revered.
Yeah, I hope so. I kind of wish he didn't come back now, to be honest. I'd rather we just remembered him from 2003 to 2009, because this period, the second stint at the club, is just going to be remembered for the Piers Morgan interview now, isn't it, unfortunately, rather than the 24 goals last season.
Yeah, there's that. But I still think if he'd gone to City, which it looks like at one point he he'd have ended up winning things with them, maybe even the Champions League. So that would have been harder to take than a Piers Morgan interview. And to be honest with you, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not really bothered about that interview. Now he's gone, he's gone. I don't think it matters too much.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now we'll get on to who's going to replace Ronaldo. What we're hearing in the last 24 hours is that the club are exploring options in January. Now there seems to be, differing stories coming out that we're going to go for our first target, our number one target in January, bring our budget forward from the summer, and then other reports are saying that we're going to go for another Gallo type sign, for 6 months. Now there's lots of names being talked about for the permanent signing, like Victor Osman at Napoli, even João Felix at Atletico Madrid. Cody Gakpo potentially could come in and play as a number 9 if Ten Hag wanted him to. Who would you favour as a replacement for Ronaldo?
There's a few decent, you mentioned some good names there. I think there's all question marks around him. Maybe Cody Gakpo, I know he can play on the left and come in. I think he can play down the middle, though. He seems like a player. He's having a very good season this season. Still only young. I think he's 23. And there's obviously interest there. I think United have been in for him before. Jonathan David, obviously, you mentioned from Lille. He's another good player. Victor Osimhen, I like Victor Osimhen. I think he's an exciting player and he's one who gets stuck in. His injury record worries me slightly. He does pick up the odd injury, especially the way he plays. He likes to stick his head in things and stick his foot in, and he's a bit of a battler at times. But if you're going to get him, it's going to cost you upwards of 100 million. So I think he went to Napoli, didn't he, for about 70 million, up to 80. The highest, most expensive African player ever, I think. So there's worries about them all. But maybe Gakpo out of the ones you've mentioned. I think actually Ivan Toney could have been a player, but who came in and maybe was like the second choice to Anthony Martial if Martial can stay fit. But I think the gambling issues he's got has probably scuppered that happening.
Yeah, and it seemingly scuppered his England chances as well. But yeah, he's a very good striker on his day. Probably not. He's not consistent enough to the point where you'd want him at United, But he tends to score goals in bursts, I suppose is what I'm saying. He get a hat trick and then he go 5 weeks without scoring and then he get a brace, and then a couple of weeks without scoring and then get another brace. He's that type of striker. But yeah, that would be an interesting option. But Cody Gakpo, I suppose he mostly plays on the left hand side, I think, and likes to cut in. He's almost like a kind of a Dutch Rashford in a way.
Yeah, I think that's the only sort of. I mean, the thing with Rashford and Gakpo, to a certain degree, they can both play down the middle if they need to, or on the left. Well, probably both prefer on the left, but I think you could get away with swapping them or having one on the left and one down the middle if you needed to. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens with Anthony Martial, because I think Eric Ten Hag really likes him. He sort of gave him a chance straight away in pre-season, and he's just had no luck with injuries as of this season, Anthony Martial. I know he's always had the odd injury in that, but this season he's been horrendous for him. I think, if he can stay fit and get a run of games under his belt, then he could be the guy that sort of, at least this season anyway, replaces Ronaldo.
Yeah, I know that header that Gakpo scored for Holland was a centre forward header. That would be, so he's capable of playing that role, it seems. Fantastic player. His stats this season are out of this world. Was it 13 goals and 17 assists already? That's crazy numbers.
That's what I mean. You can't ignore those stats, can you?
Yeah, and he went from attracting interest from Leeds and Southampton to attracting interest from United and Real Madrid. So,
some step up, and that just shows you how well he's doing, because you look at Leeds or whatever, and then you're looking at Manchester United. It's just different gravy in it.
Yeah, 100%. Josh Lewis here says, Jay Motty, Titan of the Man United fan base, top guy.
Thanks, Josh. You're good in. Appreciate that, bro.
Very kind words. And Burr says, big up, guys. What a day yesterday. Ron gone and possibly the Glazers. Yeah,
I know he's right. It is. It's a mad day.
I think your friend Henry Winter said if Carlsberg did Tuesdays.
Yeah, he did, and I get that, because obviously, I mean, the Ronaldo Ronaldo leaving thing was it was by the by, but Glazers potentially going is amazing. Do you know what I mean? It's like that is cause for a celebration.
Yeah, the Glazers leaving is like winning the Champions League. It's that
Yeah, it
big.
feels like that. It does feel like. I just wanted to say as well, Josh, who was in the chat. I always say that on my intros. If anyone's wondering what he's on about, I always say Titan of the Man United fan base. So
Yeah.
he's obviously a fan of the channel.
Definitely. So things are looking up for Man United and Ten Hag. Like we've been dropping points here and there. We've dropped points in like to the Newcastle and Chelsea games where we should have won. But largely, it has been a good start to the season ever since the first two games, which were a disaster, obviously. But since then, it's been mostly good. Um, and we're going into like a wee run of fixtures after Christmas that are winnable. So hopefully we can get 4 wins in a row there. Um, do you think there's an opportunity to maybe pick up a trophy this season, especially with so many of the so-called big teams being knocked out of the League Cup? Do you think we go all the way maybe in the Europa League or the League Cup?
If we can get past Barca, then yeah, I'd put us as favourites. It's a big if, but and I think we could do. I think over 2 legs. We'll miss Martinez for the first leg, but I think we could get past them. The League Cup, yeah. I think this United team on our day could beat anyone. On our day. People go, well, what about City? They did us. I think you look at it, if we're being honest, it was the first derby for Erik ten Hag, and I think he maybe was a little bit naive in his thinking in midfield because Eriksen had been playing so well, because, Bruno and McTominay were playing well. I think he thought he could get away with that midfield, and we couldn't. I think had we swapped Eriksen for Casemiro, we would have given ourselves a bit of a fighting chance. And I also think we were very unlucky in that game in the sense that Varane got injured, was off the pitch for one of Haaland's goals, I think the corner, and then the second one just wasn't able to get there. The second one for Haaland, wasn't able to get there and ended up going off. So I'm not saying that changed the game. We still would have lost. But I think that, it was a couple of things that had gone our way. It would have been a much more competitive game. So I just feel that, if we can get the right balance with when we rotate who we pick for what games, then we've got a chance in any of the cup competitions. I really believe that.
Yeah, I think we're playing City at home on the 14th of January, something like that. So it'll be interesting to see what Ten Hag has learned from the experience at the Etihad, to see what tweaks he makes and see can we get a result in that game. And I would agree with you. I think, a midfield of McTominay and Casemiro would probably make sense against a team like City.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the way Kevin De Bruyne was running through our midfield. It was just ridiculous. And I think that I understood it because Eriksen had been fantastic that early spell in the season. You think, well, you can't drop him. But, in the cold light of day, and hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I think a lot of people are saying this is a bit of a risky tactic, and it obviously didn't pay off.
No, and Eriksen isn't used to doing defensive work. I think it was the first goal where he completely lost Phil Foden because he wasn't tracking the run. But that's not his game.
Is it? It's not his game. You're right. Spot on.
Yeah, so I agree with you. If we can get past Barca, we've got a chance of winning the Europa League. That'll probably be the most difficult tie that we'll have in the competition. Martinez will be a big loss in the first leg. And Varane was injured then too. It's the dreaded centre back pairing in the new camp of Maguire and Lindelof. I wouldn't fancy our chances if that was the case. But the League Cup probably is the best chance now because so many of the big teams are out, and then Liverpool are playing City in the next round. We've got Burnley. Surprised a few people the date of that Burnley game, and we all thought our next game was going to be after Christmas, but that game is actually before Christmas.
2 days after the World Cup final, so that could be that could be interesting.
Yeah, any United players who make it to the last 4 will definitely not be playing in that game. But there's plenty of players who are not even at the World Cup, so they'll probably definitely start, like Sancho and Van der Beek and Garnacho and Martial. You expect all those players to start that game. De Gea, of course, and Lindelof. Yeah, they'll all start that match.
Yeah, 100%.
You'd expect us to get through that. I know Burnley are top of the championship, but we think we'd have enough at home to get past them. Like,
we can't have Vincent Kompany beating us as manager. It'd just be too difficult to take that one, wouldn't it? It'd be horrible.
He was asked last night by Lineker if he would take Ronaldo at Burnley, and he said he wants players who can run. That was his. I laughed at that one.
Firing shots. That says it all. That doesn't
Yeah,
it? Typical.
yeah.
Seriously.
Not really like him to be like that,
No.
But anyway, so the World Cup has threw up a few shocks so far. Saudi Arabia beating Argentina, Japan beating Germany. So yeah, it has been exciting despite all the controversy around the World Cup. The football has been good. Canada started really well against Belgium. For what I saw, them Jonathan David actually missed a penalty in the opening minutes,
Yeah.
unfortunately for them. But I think Belgium might be 1-0 up now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a interesting start to the tournament. You know, Germany been shocked by Japan, and Argentina been shocked by Saudi Arabia, but England winning 6-2 against Iran, Spain winning 5-0 against Costa Rica. Despite the shocks, there's still some mediocre teams in the competition, and the World Cup doesn't really get going until the knockout stages. So who would be your favourites to win the World Cup?
Brazil are the obvious ones, aren't they? I think most people looking at them. I think, this. People say this isn't a vintage England team or whatever, or perhaps we missed our chance to win a trophy in the Euros. But you've got an outside chance. I think we've got some good players, and they seem to turn up in big tournaments with Gareth Southgate. France looked good, didn't they, against Australia? So yeah, I think the obvious ones, Brazil. France have looked good, and I think England I think they've got an outside chance, definitely.
Yeah, I think I'm not an England fan, as you can probably guess, but I think England are at their best when they're on the front foot. This negative five at the back from Gareth Southgate doesn't excite me. But now he seems to have kind of dropped Calvin Phillips for Jude Bellingham, and he should stick with that. And go on the front foot. Let's see if he does it against. It's easy to do that against Iran, but let's see if he does that, for instance, against France, who England would have a good chance of playing them in the quarters. So that would be interesting. If France played England in the quarters and they're both going on the front foot, that'd be a fantastic game to watch, wouldn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I would go with Brazil as well. We haven't seen them yet. I think they play tomorrow. I kind of you wouldn't mind one or a couple of the United players to win the World Cup. At the same time, if I'm being honest, I'd rather if they were all knocked out early doors and get back to
well,
Carrington.
This is it with the United head on. I don't blame you for thinking like that, because the priority is always United, in it. So, but you don't know. Sometimes players can win a World Cup or whatever, or do well in a World Cup and come back with the tails up and take that sort of confidence and that euphoria and that positivity into the club form as well. So it's a difficult one in it to sort of predict.
Yeah, and we've got players in most of the teams that are favourites to win the World Cup. We've got players in most of those squads, so probably somebody's going to win it, I think. And there's a good chance that somebody at our club's going to go all the way, and then they definitely will be back for the Burnley game. But I think everybody, no matter what, will be back for that Forest game. What's really disappointing is that we have to wait to 8 o'clock on the 27th for a game. I usually get so excited about the Boxing Day football, and that's been taken away from me again.
Yeah, I think a few people will be grateful when in nursing a hangover or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show again, Jay, and it'll be great to have you back.
100%, always a pleasure, Carl. Love chatting to you. So yeah, give us a shout and we'll do this again soon. Do this again when the season starts back up.
Definitely. If everyone gives me a like in the video, subscribe to the channel and comment your thoughts down below, and we'll see everyone again later.